Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to continue on with our meetings every 2 weeks, knowing that everybody's busy with farming and other stuff. I completely understand that. In July, I go away for scout camp for a couple weeks. But I think we've been getting some really valuable input, and I feel like recording it has allowed people to comment or bring up points either on Facebook or other things. So although we don't have a large audience tonight, I do want to say it's appreciated, and that we'll post it for any other comments that we can then talk about. So first of all, I wanted to go around and see if there's any comments or thoughts on the Agribility Regional Workshop we had, and any ways that you think we might be able to utilize great things of it, because I think there are a lot of great things of it, or how we want to shape that then for our conference in January. So any thoughts out there?
I thought it was very informative, very helpful. It was very nice to get to know the community. I really enjoyed it. Can't think of anything really but good things to say. It was very helpful. Nice to be able to see people in person and get to know them. I really enjoyed it.
Do you think that as a new farmer, do you think the content was useful to you, Miranda?
Very useful,
Okay,
extremely useful,
appreciate that.
because it enabled me to have a little bit of a better vision and how to navigate it. So it was very helpful.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody or thoughts?
Hi, Joe, it's Michelle. I think if it would have been done like in a colder month where I didn't have to run home and do things every night or every morning, it would have been better. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I got to learn a lot about a lot of different things.
No, that's a great point, and that's one of the reasons why we picked January for the other event, and the reason why Agribility has their normal workshops in the winter as well. It's because it's outside the farming cycle and a little bit more flexibility. So point well taken. Leslie, do you think the farm tour went well for you? Did you enjoy that? Do you think we did good for you? And do you think you had enough time for us there?
Well, it was so wonderful for us. It was really a thrill to get and also lovely to meet so many people that I'd only seen on screen or not at all. I think it was very short. It was very short, but I also appreciate that it was a part of a whole day where it was really very much an introduction, but certainly we could have gone into more detail on different aspects, but I don't know how much of that is necessary to do on site either. You know, I think some things are really great to see in person, like how do you have things set up, certain kinds of things, but some of the general business stuff will happen virtually or in other kinds of ways.
Yeah, no, you're right. Maybe I don't want to say a pre-brief, or maybe the day before, hey, if you go on the farm tour, this is what to be prepared for, and maybe a classroom setting first and then more action on site. Now, when we do January, kind of our goal is to use what's at Fair Oaks. So they have that awesome so that's going to kind of be, I think, our family farm tour for that. Dawn Marie, you got any thoughts or anything on, since you've been involved in the planning for January as well? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I love, I can't commend you enough for picking places that are looking at being profitable and how to make that work. Like Leslie talked about setting up a bed and breakfast so that there are rentals out there that help pay the farm mortgage. That is brilliant. Also, the fact that they're making money on the rabbits. I love the idea of income streams like what Adam in Grout talks about, you know, with beekeeping, that there are profitable things you can get into right now. Those were wonderful to see. I really liked the mushroom operation that was small and compact and could be done in an urban setting. He was creative with doing a lot of his own designs for like heating the bales to sterilize them before he added the fungi. Also how he mixed things in those hoppers. I just appreciated his creativity and self-sufficiency and the fact that he's making money. And I also like the model of the restaurant and shop that all the farmers put their value-added products in. That was great. And I found out all of that was paid for out of a grant to the city.
Oh,
So they
interesting.
don't have overhead to pay off to get to unload that. Their costs for those farmers are just the labor in there. So,
Okay.
and they have an approved kitchen on site. So I liked some of the ideas that you exposed us to, and I think those are hopeful. And we can start benchmarking on those around the state.
Yeah, no, I agree. I did like them. So my idea for the January conference, and please give us your input because between the group, Dawn and I, and anybody else is invited, we'll start spinning up the invites for January, was to do 2 lanes, kind of 2 tracks of conference, because we do have a couple of rooms available there. One is we are going to have, I think we can have 13 or 14 people display or have tables. So with those tables, we are going to charge. Agribility charged pretty much what it took for the meals for those tables. I'm thinking we're going to charge a little bit more so we can maybe encompass a little bit of people. So, you know, something maybe near $300 or $400 for a table. And then also to do in January, 2 tracks, like I was trying to mention, was 2 tracks. One would be, so when they do the beekeeping school, one was for beginning beekeeper and one was for an advanced beekeeper. And I think that keeps the audience and makes it more valuable use of people's time. So when you go to the beekeeping school, I might have talked about this before. If I've never been a beekeeper and I want to learn about beekeeping, I get a wristband that's blue. I go through a kind of a really in-depth how to be a beekeeper, what a bee does. Jerry went through that, I know, at the Indiana Bee School. And then the other track is, hey, I've been a beekeeper and I went to the basics. I kind of want to know how to make a queen or catch a swarm or do something more advanced. So my thought was 2 tracks to keep everybody's interest up. Now we have enough rooms for 50 people 50 families set aside and space in the conference area for 200 people. So that's kind of where we're at. I was wondering, Jerry, since you're on, if you had any thoughts on kind of the model that they use for beginning beekeeping at the Indiana Bee School, and if you thought that was kind of workable and valuable.
I just got on about 5 minutes ago, Joe. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you. I'm trying to adjust my volume too. You're talking about the Muncie school that I went to, the beginner school?
Yeah, to do that model for the January conference at Fair Oaks Farm.
I got, you know, the syllabus and all that information. If you want that, it was very well done.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of thinking that model since we have a lot of beginning farmers and we have a lot of advanced farmers to keep everybody's interest. You know, Doug, if that's Doug Waddle's iPhone on, you know, Doug's been doing bison for quite a while and he's, you know, like Leslie's selling or on the verge of selling product. He probably doesn't need the same discussion that you know, like somebody who's at one of the vet farms needs. So that was kind of my thought. I was wondering if anybody else had any thoughts, if that would be valuable to split it.
Well, I think that just, it is nice to have interest-driven information that you're sharing, because the more, you know, sessions that you have that's focused on one area, that certain people would be going to the meeting at least for that purpose. Like I went to Muncie just because of the beekeeping beginner school. The very beginning part of it, because I knew nothing. They had a lot of advanced classes too, but you know, they had that divided off real well, where there was advanced information, but there was also just a session, not just a session, a whole day just for beginning beekeepers.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Hey, anybody else have any thoughts on splitting it that way?
I
Okay,
always feel bad with the splits because I want to go to both of them. So it creates conflict, but you know, I'm sure that everybody will find their best choice.
I appreciate that.
I
Yeah, so
think
we,
once-
go ahead.
I think that once you've gone through a basic class, that repeating it gets old. And I really would like more information on more advanced things like capturing a swarm, things like that. I think that would be better split. I really do.
Okay. So what I think what I'm hearing is maybe we should send out a poll for the membership to give ideas. How does that sound? To give ideas on topics for January. The reason we did it this route is so that we could make it as valuable as possible. So tomorrow I'll talk to Katie about putting something out in the veterans and farming email, so people then can say, hey, this is a topic, maybe just 3 topics of what would draw me to a conference at Fair Oaks.
Sounds good.
Okay, excellent. I did send out to some of the people, the SWAF Midwest Climate Smart Commodity Project. I got some feedback back from Will Fett, and he was not sure he could make it tonight. I don't think he's on. So just so you know, and love input is NRCS has funded, I would say, contractors or organizations that are for-profit organizations that go out and talk to farmers or coordinate with farmers to broker and obtain their carbon credits for industry. So I'll use Doug's example because we chatted a bit about it. So this agency would go to Doug and say, hey, Doug, we'll give you $30 an acre if you give us your carbon credits, and then they give him a contract. Part of that is subsidized by the NRCS and USDA. So it makes me more comfortable that the organization is legit. Ed set out some good information on some of the concerns that straight purchase of carbon credits have. But I kind of think that if an organization is tied to an NRCS grant, that it legitimizes the organization through the grant process, right? You don't want to upset USDA and not get a grant again. One of the outcomes, or one of the factors in that, in the approach with me from the organization, was they would give us $2 an acre for everybody that signed on. So if Doug has 350 acres and he signs on, Veterans in Farming, or the organization that represents it, would then get $700, $2 an acre, and then 50 cents an acre every year after that. But again, it means that we have to help them advertise, and then we get kind of they call it a recruiting bonus. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I don't know if anybody had thoughts on carbon credits and brokering them. Doug, I know you had some questions. Did we answer what your thoughts were, or any thoughts on that, Doug?
Hey, this is Jerry. You know, Senator Braun introduced that bill for farmers getting carbon credits and to sell them. And that bill was passed in the Senate 98-0.
Huh.
Just for example, I have 68 acres that a farmer is farming and not using the credits. Is it something that I could pass on those credits for that 68 acres that somebody else is farming? But I could, you know, that'd be something worth exploring, maybe.
No, and you're right. And I didn't ask what the relationship on leased would be. They implied when I talked to them a lot of direct relationship. And in fact, in Will's email to me, he mentions that there is a 20% objective of underserved being in the program. So there's a lot of value for them to reach out to veterans to do it. So Doug said he's going to keep me posted on his carbon credits. So if everybody's interested, and we think it's something we want to represent, I will tell them to have that we will host a meeting for them to present at for anybody interested. And then we can put out the information, and really it's a link that comes back to us. But I wondered a little bit what legitimacy of it, but I think it's good. And then it's the only thing we get is really just the recruiting fee, which I think would put a little bit of money in our coffers to start with.
I think it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, okay. Then I will work on that. One other
Joe?
thing, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that this reminds me that the sponsor of the VSO training out of Vietnam Veterans of America told me that there are 58,000 veterans in Indiana, that he estimates that probably 20% live in cities, but all the rest are rural. And so that we have thousands of veterans who are farmers that he has a database on that he said he would let us use to contact farmers to offer opportunities.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, and you got to meet him. So there's just another good network there as a possibility.
No, and that's a great point. In fact, Buzz Smith, who does a lot of the veteran outreach, would probably allow us to use his list as well. And I can look at that too. And he's got a lot of veteran. I mean, I think I'll talk to Katie about doing a catchy flyer, and then we'll just hold a Zoom meeting with them and they can present the link, and we'll see what happens, right? People need to make their own decisions, and it's not us signing the contract as veterans in farming, it's the individual.
Yeah.
Okay. Super. Krista, did you make it on? I don't know if Krista was going to make it on or not. Sarah, are you able to talk?
Maybe.
I was just wondering if you want to give an update on what we've done at the two farms over the past couple weeks.
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can. You sound kind of funny though. You sound much younger.
Yeah, right. No, I wish. Yeah, we've been able to actually get 2 movable chicken coops, which have been delivered, one to the veteran farm in Danville, and then one to the farm in Anderson where Chris was out working. We were also able to get 2 of the horizontal hives and then get bees to put in those, and then some additional hives put over at the farm in Anderson. And I think Miranda and Michelle are on the call, so they're getting used to all their new supplies and animals and all that. But it's a huge outreach from your organization, Joe. So thank you so much for that. And things are finally chugging along for the season, and it's really exciting seeing all the different changes continuing over there.
Yeah, and if those haven't friended Miranda's and Michelle's Facebook site, if you want to put that link in the comments, Miranda or Michelle, you're more than happy to. And I reposted it on Vets and Farming Facebook site as well. So they're kind of putting out there what's available for them and what they can sell. Hopefully in the next couple months, it's eggs.
Hopefully, we're really
Yeah.
great. We've been passing out the flyers that we got from the conference, telling everyone about, there a lot of beginning farmer opportunities to and try to promote veterans in farming. So it's really been a win-win for us, I know, because we have a lot of great support and a lot of patience from you all. So we're really grateful. You're very helpful.
No, and that's, we appreciate you because you're the ones taking on the challenge. And we got to see, how we can grow this, and you guys are teaching us, I think, a lot on how to do it. I think that's a lot of value for our membership as well, to use those 2 farms as much as we can. I recently had Addie's Orchard approved for the DoD Skill Bridge program as a sponsor for Operation Groundwork. So Operation Groundwork is what we call the veteran farms, kind of military operation, right? So with that said, hopefully we'll get some transitioning soldiers interested and be able to put them on those farms as well for training. We are also getting a DoD Skills Bridge soldier in November to help with agribility. So the more the merrier, whoever we can help out. So we are going to do a couple of events we've talked about. Krista's going to put together a list of opportunities at the farm in Anderson. On the 24th, we have NRCS doing a nutrient and soil class. I think we have about 14 or 15 people signed up for it now. And then we'll continue to post. And I need to load the classes in the website for Porter Farm too. I am delinquent in that. So we'll do that as well. Is there anybody have an idea on a future farm or something we want to do on those farms that interests them? Sarah may send me a dirty look on this, but I've thought about after the farm visits, why don't we try rabbits or mushrooms? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I love mushrooms. It's just a little bit labor intensive, and then you got to find all the stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm all over mushrooms. I love it. It's just people need to be able to run it. So
What about rabbits?
I love the idea of rabbits.
Do you?
Tammy looks like she does too. I think they're cool, and I think they're pretty useful. I think they're an underutilized meat source, but then I think also using them for fertilizer, I think they're also a very accessible animal for interactions. So if you have them on something like a veteran farm where people can take them out of the cages and play with them, care for them, they're an easy animal that doesn't require a lot of specialized equipment or specialized skill. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in that.
Any other thoughts, Tammy? You want rabbits?
Oh,
I think that Leslie spoke very highly of them, so it's certainly something that we could learn a little bit about. Maybe she could actually do a class on them or something somewhere at one of the farms.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, hey Leslie, what do you think of maybe we put, not tomorrow, but out there, a little plan on, how to start up a rabbit farm, and we could do that at one of the veteran farms to be determined. What
Yeah.
supplies you need, all that. What do you think about
Yeah,
that, Leslie?
I'd love to work on such a thing. I think that really, we already have, oh gosh, at least, I know of at least 3 veterans, and of course, John Antill would be one of them, and David Prim, and the Pugh family that are majorly into rabbits. And I think that there's just also kind of benefits that they would speak to about just how working with the animals is so soothing. It's really rewarding, and it's very calm work. And it's great in terms of, it doesn't require huge amounts of like upper body strength, especially if you pick the right breed. And so there's a lot of ability, built into that particular stock. So somebody who wants to work with stock, it's something that's very doable. And like you guys were saying about mushrooms, it can be done on any scale. It can be done, on the sly in your your garage, or it can be something much more elaborate. So it really works to scale quite well. People can try it, and then there's just lots of value add that we can do with rabbits.
Okay, super. If you want to put some thoughts together on that, Leslie, we'll, kind of look at that and maybe see between Sarah, I, and Michelle, Miranda, and Krista, what farm fits best. If you have the opportunity up in Anderson, let me know. We could show you the Anderson farm or the Danville farm, so you could get an idea as well. Maybe we'll just do a series of how to start rabbit farming, right? Or how to start mushrooms. I like the mushroom idea because there is some opportunity to get military reefers, which I think was pretty much what that gentleman had in his basement, was a military reefer, and we could easily get one of those and do it in a reefer as well. Nice, dark. You just have to add the sprinkling system for him. And he sells the entire mushroom package, just in a larger scale, where you would make about, I think he said about $10 to $20 a bag is kind of the profit margin on those bags, if you didn't do the wood log method.
Yeah, there's been a ton of interest in veterans throughout the state in the past with different training things we've done on mushrooms. Like that is definitely one of the biggest draws that we've had on classes. That and honeybees.
Oh, nice. The thing that doesn't get me into mushrooms is I think you have to be, and I don't know how successful you are, Sarah, the challenge is the environment. And so this gentleman had the environment set. I think on like my farm, I would not have the environment for them. Just kind of a thought there that might be.
You could do shiitake, log grown mushrooms in your backyard. So really it's just about providing a few different location things. It's about moisture, a little bit of shade. And then really it's about the materials that you use, but they're easy to grow. Shiitake specifically.
Shiitakes are okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Leslie, if you want to help us out with the rabbits, and maybe after that we'll consider doing mushrooms.
Well,
Is there, Leslie, just to make me smart on the rabbits, is there a particular time frame for getting the breeds and stuff? I mean, like for bees, it's hard to get a nuke after now. This is kind of the end of the nuke season for bees. Is there a rabbit season as well, or are they always
yeah,
available?
that's another advantage, is they're really something you can do year round. I kind of tend to lose a little bit of steam myself in August, just because it's
We
too
all
steamy. And then in the winter, like with chickens, if you want them to produce well in the winter, you need to give some supplemental lighting. So
Okay.
they'll also go into a nice little kind of winter winter lull if you if you don't kind of give them a little bit of lights, but not just like with chickens. It doesn't have to be elaborate.
Okay,
Hey, Leslie,
Super.
remind me, where are you located?
We're in the kind of Spencer, Bloomington, Ellettsville orbit, so we're not that far
Okay.
from you
Yeah,
because you're in
perfect.
Danville, right?
Perfect.
Okay, super. And then the bylaws. So Tammy's doing a great job on the bylaws. She sent me a note, but I haven't had a chance to look at it yet today. So some of the discussion points, kind of a thumbs up or a thumbs down of the idea is do we or do we not do annual dues? Any thoughts on that?
I think there's arguments both ways.
Yeah, no, I agree. Tim, you got any thoughts on annual dues? I think you brought it up last time a little bit as well.
It depends upon, what you're getting for your money. That's what it's gonna come down to. What do you have to offer? What's the organization have to offer? So forth. So, yeah, when you end up, you talk like, well, say $50 a year, it'd be less than $5 a month. So, that might be reasonable. What are you gonna do? You should be charging something of a nominal fee in dues wise to pay for setting up, we should be setting up an e-newsletter as part of our advertising campaign. That would be the best way. Because back in May, you discussed you had a total of potential 746 members, what I wrote down. You had less than 300 for contact
Yeah,
response. So I think this is where you're going in the next direction and so forth. This way you can turn around and go back up to what was there? You had it listed on what was going on the website for Porter Farm. We discussed that a couple meetings ago, whatever, and then your other events you've been speaking about, your SWAP, your January conference, you can do everything into that. So, I don't know. I'm not objective to like $50 a year. So for just to pay for your time, more or less you're setting up to get a new newsletter out. You might have to print some hard copies to put on tables for events or something like that.
yeah, no, you're right. And one of the things that we had talked about, or I talked about with other people on annual dues, is it causes people then to not say participate, but ensure that they're still a viable part of the organization. Without annual dues, people come to stuff, and maybe we phrase that as the events are free, right? So if you come to an event, the farm events are free. So if you do an event at Porter Farm or someplace else, which is free already, we make it free for members. And then if you're not a member, then we have a nominal fee, $5, $10 to attend, with the ability to AgVet stipends it, right? So AgVet could stipend it, or the person could select a very cheap membership. And I think that is kind of similar to the way that, again, I look at the Indiana Beekeepers Association because they have a very good business model as well. So I know one of the things we talked about at one time, I think it was last time, Jerry, was value. I was wondering if, from your business and your experience, do you think there's a point where we will, as an organization, that we hit that enough value to ask for dues? What are any thoughts on that?
Well, you can do it two ways. One way is to have like a general membership so that you have a broader, which is free, which is a broader reach. And then you could have like an executive membership that has a fee that those value added advantages come along. I mean, I have years ago, I bought a book about a guy that all he did was made a living off of a newsletter. And that was all he did. He studied an area and researched the area and wrote a newsletter, and he made millions of dollars a year just sending out a newsletter to people that subscribe for it. So information is power. And certainly I don't have a lot of information, but Joe, you've got a lot of information, and collectively there's a lot of information that people can provide. So I think you ought to think about some way of putting a value to the information that you know and others know, that they like this whole idea of rabbits. I mean, the information that was shared in Indianapolis about the simplicity of being the number of rabbits you can kill and sell is huge. Wasn't that 1,500 or something like that, or 2,000 a year? Was I off on that, or what was the number?
Leslie, is it 1,000?
1,000?
Mhm.
Well, how many people know that? I mean, that just to be able to get that information and somebody extract that information and give here's how you do it. If you want to be a veteran rabbit farmer, here's how you do it. You become an executive member, and we have this little booklet that comes along with membership. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's some key insights. I appreciate that a lot. Any other thoughts out there?
I think having different membership levels is a good idea. I mean, there can be different levels of information you can obtain through membership, or just, lowest membership, you could get a monthly newsletter, on up to, executive membership where you get detailed information.
Yes, and maybe so, like a general member is yeah, and then we have to start breaking out the benefits for a general and an executive, because there are functions within the website that I have not looked into that allow for markets as well. So I'll put together for the next meeting with Tammy and John a few ideas on membership levels, and we'll try to go through that next time too.
Wait a
So-
minute, I got a question about that.
Go ahead.
Okay, just what was kind of go over a summary of what you said there. So are you looking at annual dues as a revenue generation? Are you
Oh,
looking at?
no.
No. Okay, so you're gonna basically, what we're gonna do is we're gonna categorize our organization here. So you're talking your basic all the way up to probably intermediate level, then executive level. Something like that, 3 levels or 2. Associate, just an associate, gonna be free. You're gonna have a general. You're gonna have a sponsor type. Yeah, okay. And then an executive level. And this is gonna give you access to whatever information you're talking about.
So when I think general, I think that a veteran, that part of our charter and vision for a general is to inform veterans, which will be everybody and probably free. I think if we go to a more robust executive, that there needs to be other benefits associated with it.
Yeah. There damn well better be. so forth. If not, you're going to lose a lot of membership right off because we've talked about this inclusion and exclusion. And this is exactly where you've ended up and you've taken this rather than just one membership whatsoever. And you talked about, as far as the 3 topics you just discussed, mushrooms, rabbits, and honeybees. I have all this information from the 90s when I did this on 5 acres for myself and made a profit from it. I didn't need to come to Indianapolis, even though I'm probably 5 miles from where you was, turn around and talk about, because 2 does and 1 buck with rabbits will yield you 200 pounds of high protein, low cholesterol, white meat, and so forth. You'll have enough fryers to feed a family of 6 for a year alone. So there you are. Now you
No,
know
I-
how I feel about that, all right?
Yeah, I know how you feel, Tim, and I appreciate that. My only thought is that we do have a general expense requirement. And how do we continue to,
Sure.
meet the general expense requirement, the
Sure.
website, other things.
You're exactly right. That's what, why I did not, you wanted to put 90% donation back. That's why I kind of asked you to turn around and exclude that at the present time, maybe come back a year or 2 later and reassess that, so forth. So what we don't, at least what I don't know what your expenses are. I don't know what you have. I ran a multi-state corporation with 24 employees. I'm not a novice to business. I can end up and probably do quite a bit of helping with that. You just need to, some of this needs to be exposed a little bit more.
Okay, let me get with
Okay,
John and let's
I don't
lay
want
out
to
some
get in there anymore
finances.
about it.
No, I agree. I think it's a fair point. We'll lay out some of our finances and expenses. And, then we can look at if we need to do membership dues.
Joe,
Yeah,
I thought the membership dues, there was another angle on that, which was evidence of commitment. So I'm investing in this, therefore I'm going to participate. It was more than just covering expenses. So it was an evidence of buy-in. And I agree with Tim 100%. We have to show value. And there is value in getting help with grant writing and benefit education from the VSOs, and a list of all the opportunities for training, and the networking, because part of our mission statement is that there's mentoring. So there are lots of levels of value. But I wonder, how to present all of that.
no,
So
I
I'm
think
just
we can,
saying there's more there.
I think what maybe we just, so here's my thought. I think we can survive financially. We do owe everybody kind of a layout of finances. And then we really have to get the nonprofit approved and the bank accounts approved to lay that all out and then add in the expenses, because right now we're ad hocing kind of how we're paying for stuff like the chicken coops and things like that. So I'll take it as a due out that we need to lay out finances and expenses before we decide on annual dues. I think that's a very fair statement. And I think we can also mature our value and it'll hit a culminating point as well. So maybe that's a little bit of where we head in January.
Okay, and Joe, there's just one more thing on the
Mhm.
finances, that you are really good at networking, so it's not just Indiana veterans in farming. It's not just veterans in farming, it's agribility layers of funding, state VA layers of funding, Vietnam Veterans of America layers of funding. people donating. There's a web of sources of finances. And so I don't know how much of that you want to talk about, but you have a huge, deep barrel of ideas. Well, SkillBridge is an example. So plus the grants for the farms. So there are lots of things going on beyond just the pot of money that's called Veterans in Farming.
Yeah, no, you're right. And we probably, like I said, I think we have a due out to lay that out there. Tim, I appreciate your bluntness. I think it's a fair point and we'll put that out.
Yeah, you're going in the right direction. I didn't need to feel so stern about it, so forth. But when you meet me on the 24th on the soil nutrient thing, you'll see why.
Oh, I'm good. I met you at the meeting in Indianapolis. We're good. I have no hard feelings. So annual meeting to elect officers. So I don't know if anybody has a thought on if it's annual or 2 years. My thought is we probably need to, I think one of the best decisions was to cascade the positions. So there's never a new group of 3. It would be a rotating, so first year's maybe the chairman, second year's the treasurer, third year's the secretary, and then and that way the other 2 are there to have some continuity for any ideas or concerns or kind of the management of it. I think we want to do that.
Oh, Joe,
Yeah, go ahead.
the sample that I had talked about staggering the terms, but we still need an annual month, whether it's September or October or January, to elect, for example, the president position. And then a year from then we would need to elect a new person. So it does talk, you can put that in your bylaws that talks about staggering the terms.
Okay, yeah, so let's do staggered terms, and if anybody's got a discussion point on it, more than open. I think what we should do is we're probably going to gather every year in person around January to March, whether it's a sidebar to the Agri-Ability Conference or like we're doing in January, which would be a great time to kind of talk about positions and voting. So let's make it the first, I don't know how we say that, sometime between January and March, since that's probably when we're going to have the meat of the people together. And we can decide no earlier than 1 January, no later than March 31st. We'll have an election for those positions. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I really like the idea of the staggered, whatever it's called. But I'm a little concerned that it's going to be hard to get commitment for 3 years for people. So that's saying you have someone who wants to be the secretary, but then they have to commit for 3 years. That's an awfully long time to be on a nonprofit board. Like, I'm just a little nervous. Does that
It's
make sense?
actually pretty normal, but I agree with you, Sarah, that that's a long time. We can make it whatever we want. It doesn't have to be 3 years. It could be 1 year or 2 years.
Yeah.
But it just
Okay.
makes sense to do it for 2 or 3 because
Sure.
the experience is important. For example, when Joe goes off the board, he'll be he will potentially be an officer, like he will be a consultant, I guess, to the future president.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, any thoughts or concurrence of lowering it maybe to 2 years or 1 year? I think 1 year is almost too short because you kind of
Yeah.
started a cycle, but 2 years would be doable. Any thoughts on 2 years?
I like the 2 years, the midway point. We don't have to worry so much about it being too long. And we answer Sarah's concern and the 3-year mark.
Okay.
What did the state of Indiana on their nonprofit corporation, what's your guidelines say?
It doesn't
We
have one.
need,
Doesn't
yeah,
have any. Okay,
No.
so we're open to doing that. Okay.
Yeah, it just says you have to have bylaw.
Yeah, I kind of agree. A year might be a little too short. 2 years is kind of 18 months, 2 years. Yeah, be about right. Something in there. 3 years, yeah, that's too much of an enlistment for me.
I would just say from my experience on boards that at least with the officers, it's helpful if they can stagger on and off so that you're not losing all of your officers at the same time, because there's a lot of, you know, who has the login information for the website, who has the, and it's just helpful to stagger those positions.
Okay. No, so
I
let's
think
do,
it would also help to make sure it's left seat, right seat too.
That
yeah,
is what? I'm
Making sure
sorry.
that That training. Just making sure that there's a left seat, right seat with the transition so that the new person that's coming in understands and has a knowledge before they actually sit in the seat by themselves.
well,
Yep.
Actually, a lot of nonprofits have a second and a first vice president, and they kind of move up into the position of president. So we need to talk about that too and decide if we want at least one vice president in addition to a treasurer, a secretary, and director.
That's a really good point, Tammy. One of the things we talked about early on was having quite a few members on the board besides just those officers. In other words, the sector captains would be meeting with that board, and also the newsletter editor. You know, positions, maybe even the VSOs, because you need a lot of people involved. And that way it's much easier to stagger that 2-year rotation because there are so many people left with experience. What do you think about that? It seems like 3 people might be too few. And I like your idea, Tammy, of the first vice president being groomed for taking over. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of work to do. And especially if we start getting really successful with our outreach, we're going to have a lot of people knocking on the door.
Well, you can actually have as many board members as you want. So we can have as few as 3, that's the minimum. And it goes all the way up to about 15 members on the board. So that's just the executive board. It can be up to 15 people. So I think we can put whoever we want on the board. But there's also committees with the committee chair as well as the executive board, and we can have as many committees as we want.
okay. I like the idea of a vice president, so let's put that in the board. We can figure out how to get a vice president soonest.
Okay?
I do like the committees, and I wrote down VSO, communications, and regional captains. Let's give authority to the, besides those 3 being written in there, why don't we give authority to the organization to vote on other committees? It can be a
Okay.
committee vote to make another one if we think that there's something else needed. And then the big question, I think, goes back to, well, I don't think the board needs to contribute money. I know where you're coming from on that, but
Yeah.
let's leave that out.
Okay, well, that was one example.
Yeah. No, I can
I
understand
have
that.
some other committees that were in the document I sent you. Actually, there's a finance and fundraising committee, off the top of my head, marketing or communications committee, an executive board committee, which would be the secretary, treasurer, and president. Right now, maybe vice president if we elect one, but you can look at, I left it pretty broad, so an open.
Well, that's great. Yeah, we can have the executive committee be the four. And then we want an advisory board, and then particularly with some voting separation. I know Ed's got that concern probably with agribility as well as Will. And if we have them vote, it then creates a little bit of sometimes crosses a line of interest. But somebody like Jerry, who is a veteran and a member as well, could still vote if he decides to. So it doesn't cut everybody off. Just some people that need that level of comfort. And then how do we define a quorum, I guess, is the big question, you know, especially when we have virtual and 12-person meetings. It's a great question. You know, we can't make it a percentage of the membership. We can't just do that math. We'd rather really stick us. I don't know, you know, just off the top of my head, I'll throw out there, and I'm not stuck to it. 2/3 of the executive committee, and then 5 members is a quorum. Anybody good or bad with that?
I like the idea of having at least 2/3 of the executive committee, because they really need to be at most of the meetings. And it talks about how many meetings they should attend to, and that sort of falls in line with the dues that we charge. I mean, if they're not coming to the meetings, then well, I don't know, I'm not making any sense, but it sort of falls in line with the dues.
Tammy, you make a really good point. I work with an awesome volunteer organization here in town that just threw out the director over politics, and she's the one that started a low-cost spay-neuter clinic. She helped build a $2 million building. Her blood is in that place, but over a dispute with the board, she's out.
Oh, wow.
And this could happen to us. I mean, anytime you have something volunteer run, we may have a common philosophy about how we want to see this go, but it would be easy to be overwhelmed by an influx of, you know, a different philosophy or politics. God knows what happens. So I like what you're saying about people who are involved, people who are attending, and people who are paying dues. Those do kind of protect the organization's stability.
Yes, I was just in an organization and we had to fire a volunteer because of some things that she was doing. She was kind of overstepping her bounds. And so I understand that it's important to have checks and balances.
And Tammy, I happened to mention that to Joe because I had to go through the Vietnam Veterans of America policy manual in order to pass a test. And there is a lot of good language in there about what the moral requirements are, what the grounds are for revoking somebody's VSO status, how that's done, the appeals process. I think that's good to set up in the bylaws from the beginning, you know, what your standards of conduct are and how to deal with problems in a way that's fair and legal. So maybe I'll send you that language and we can talk about that too. It's just better to head problems off at the past from the get-go.
Okay,
Sounds good.
so
I
do
just
we,
have one,
go ahead.
I just have one question about the quorum. So if you're writing the bylaws, I think it's better to be a little less stringent than super particular. So if you're trying to have a meeting where you have to vote on certain issues and you can't get 5 outside members other than your executive committee, you're going to cancel the meeting. I mean, in my thinking, wouldn't you just need to have 2/3 or 3/4 of your actual voting members? Because that's where, in your meeting, that's where your work has to be legally shown for your nonprofit, not necessarily, I mean, it's good to have the members and to have the outside input. But I just think the more restrictions you put on there might become a problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Sarah, when you were working with those other nonprofits, did you ever run into times when you just couldn't get enough people at the meeting?
Well, we only had to have our voting people there. So as long as we had enough of the voting people there, the quorum of whatever the definition was, it's usually like 75%. As long as those people were there, we could still meet.
I guess then we have to decide who our voting members are, and I thought they were all people in the VIF. And that so far I know there's how many members does VIF have and how many have come to our meetings so far?
So I think what Sarah's leaning towards, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, because what I'm picturing in my mind is that we have the quorum if the executive committee is there, but as our intent is, every member gets to vote. So we still
Yes,
have a
that's what I'm
quorum,
saying.
it just doesn't count against the membership attendance. Is that what you're saying, Sarah?
Yep, totally.
Okay. So we'd have to change the number. Actually, it would be 3 out of 4 with the vice president, right? So 2/3 is fine for I think until we, work through who that is. But a quorum is not contingent upon members. I do think that we should, I think that's good. And that way, if we have a meeting, we can have a meeting, and then if, we start dropping off and have issues or things like that, we have some ability to still vote on things. But all the members will always be invited and they will always get a vote.
Are you gonna, I don't see anywhere where it's written, but are you gonna have anything where people can have multiple terms? Or are you gonna try and turn over the positions to new people each time?
Oh, that's a great question.
That's something that we can put in the bylaws as well, the details about positions. For example, if you're married, you're living together, you can't maybe be on the executive board at the same time, or we might talk about that if we want to. So we can address how long, or if they can do consecutive terms as well.
Yep.
This is a work in progress. Lots of thoughts.
No, it's great.
No, I think you're doing great.
Let's put those other questions together, Tammy, since we're hitting a late hour. And, one thing to always think of when you write policies or bylaws is a process to add to it. So, let's put the basic bylaws out there so we have them. And then as the secretary, if you could just keep a list of these questions, we can always vote them into being bylaws, right?
I think so, yes.
Perfect. Any other thoughts out there on the bylaws? We'll generate this. And maybe Tammy, if this is enough, we can go with what we have for bylaws. We can put it out for general comment, maybe give it like 30 days for people to comment on. And then we can vote on it maybe in August.
I'd only give 2 weeks. If you give people too long, they just won't do it.
Yeah, I'm just out of town in July.
The real
But,
truth comes out.
It did come out, but That's fine. We'll work something out. Well, but I think August is probably a fair date to start to vote on it. Any other thoughts from anybody on this?
So if you're out of town, are we going to postpone these meetings till you get back?
So I'll probably only miss one, but we could. I have to figure out what that is. We decided to do every 2 weeks. I think it's fair to do every 2 weeks until we at least get the bylaws established and the committee's solid. And then I don't want to see people, I think it's a lot of time and effort if we really start to engage the committees and then have every 2 weeks. So you could literally, like in my scouts, have a meeting every Thursday or 2 meetings a week, which I think for some people becomes very taxing. But I think what we'll look for is get the bylaws established, get the committees established, and then allow the committees to have their own meetings and pull back on this type of membership meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that way, if somebody has a passion for like communications or the regional captains or the DSOs, they can determine their own, I'll use the military term, battle rhythm for those meetings that they think work for them. And that way we're not asking people to come to a meeting a week. So,
Joe,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that our goal in January is 50 families. And so we want to be developing those relationships and getting people excited about participating.
absolutely, absolutely. So I had some thoughts on that, and anybody can join us on the committee meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for the Fair Oaks Farm. So the agribility kind of meeting has gone away because the agribility regional workshop has passed us. And so Dawn, myself, Darren, Katie, and anybody else who wants to join us will focus on the Fair Oaks Farm and how we lay that out, you know, with both advertising, finances, and everything else. And then we'll bring that committee report, because that's the way the process should be, to a meeting of this level for the membership to see.
Will you send me that information, Joe?
Yep, sure will.
I do have an appointment in the morning, so I will be late, but I would like to attend.
Love to have you. So
Is
any
it
other,
possible? Yeah, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, is it possible to do like just an open house picnic at one of the veteran farms, just as like a social get together in like July or August?
Our farm is open for that.
Yeah, no, I really like that idea, Sarah. I think maybe we just have to talk on the side a little bit. I've been talking to Ed and
Okay.
oh shoot, Linda. They have ag vet money left over, and I just need to find out how they can spend the ag vet money to see how we could fund an event like that. Does that make sense?
Yep, totally.
Okay, so Linda's tied up on the ag vet grant this week. And next week on Thursday, she'll be included in that morning meeting, and we'll probably be able to discuss how to do something like that. I'd hold a full conference if we could get everybody there. So we may just have to enrich a picnic with some other things, and we might be able to get ag vets to pay for it. It's my thought, but I can't commit to that until I understand what her left and right grant limits are.
Yeah, Bill also has given us money for picnics in the past.
Who was the other one? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Bill? With
Oh, Bill,
agribility.
yep. You know, but maybe if we enrich that a little bit, you know, with some learning points or farm tour, you know, maybe ag vet can pay for it.
Yeah, I
We
think we end up having like a speaker from a FSA or something like that in order to meet the qualifications.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll take that as a due out as well for the farms to do a summer picnic, and maybe we could do that at both of them. Any other last minute thoughts or comments? Again, I appreciate everybody's time. I think we make headway every time we meet, and I'm looking forward to how we grow in the future. I think we're doing some great stuff. So thank you and have a great day.
And good work, Tammy.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.